great. Well, let's just start off with just introduce yourself and give us something that any specific ideas, solutions that you want to make sure you highlight today. We'll start with what's most important to you.
Sure. Well, first, thank you all for having me. I'm a big fan of what you all do. I think local journalism is critically important now more than ever, although I'm sure that's been said before. And so thank you all for what you do. I know it's a challenging business environment to be in the business that you all are, but it's important. And so I just want to say thank you as a longtime reader. In terms of what's important, I would say a few things. First, at the top of any list would be public safety, is working with folks across this entire city to make sure we have a comprehensive plan that is truly action-oriented to improve public safety and specifically to reduce the amount of senseless gun violence. That is something that I think has to be our number one priority as a city. Two others, if I can mention three, if that's okay.
Go right ahead.
I really would love to make universal pre-K a reality for all 3- and 4-year-old students, so that every 3- and 4-year-old, regardless of what circumstances of life they're born into, they have the same opportunity for success. Research is very clear. Kids who start education at an early age are going to lead healthier lives, safer lives, have more opportunities, and in Louisville, we owe it to future generations to make universal pre-K a reality. Happy to talk about all these things in more detail, of course. And third is affordable housing. The foundation for people to, again, live safe and healthy and happy and prosperous lives is to have a safe, affordable, and quality place to live. And we have an affordable housing crisis in our community. It's impacting those who are homeless. It's impacting those who are employed but aren't making enough to get by, and so they're forced to live with relatives or friends or from place to place. And so we must do more to have public-private partnerships, work with the private sector, work with nonprofits to have affordable housing across the entire city. And at the same time, when the city is in the business of managing housing units through LMHA, we need to make sure that that housing is of a quality that we all would be proud. And right now, that is not something that I believe the city can say. So in terms of priorities, I would put those three at the top of my list.
Great. And what, taking those priorities or however, what do your first 90 days in office look like? When the rubber hits the road, what's going through your head? And
Sure.
How are you preparing?
So I think the first thing is it's critically important to have a really strong team of people. A team of folks that share my sense of urgency to get things done, that don't think we need to study any more problems, because we all know what the challenges of the city are. And everyone has great ideas of solutions, and most people even agree with the solutions. So the key is finding action-oriented people that are ready to get to work immediately. I also think it's important that the administration be extremely diverse by race, by gender, by experience, by where they're from, people from the private sector, nonprofit sector, public sector already, and that we just really have a strong, diverse team of people that is truly empowered to do their job and then are held accountable for the common goals that we set together. So assembling that team, now you can't wait till the first day. I mean, we need to take the 7 weeks of the transition to start doing that and to ensure that that is. And then I think also taking some clear steps right away to show the city that our administration is truly working to move Louisville in a new direction. So for example, with respect to gun violence, you all might have heard a policy initiative that I put out there several weeks ago. But right now, under Kentucky law, when guns are confiscated, and already year to date, I believe 2,000 guns have been confiscated, approximately 2,000 guns have been confiscated by LMPD. Actually, you all are the ones that brought this issue to the forefront of everyone's attention last year. So you know it better than anyone. When guns are confiscated, they are turned over to the state, who in turn auctions them off, and too often those guns are back on the street and used to commit crimes again. That is absurd. That is dangerous. I understand, though, it's the law. And so what I said is that on our first day in office, we will change the policy that when those guns are confiscated, they'll be rendered inoperable before we turn them over to the state police. That's the best we can do now. We should advocate for changes to that law. but I want the city to see things are going to be done differently, that we are going to take creative, bold solutions, large and small. I understand this just might be a small part of the public safety solution, but we will do things like that. We'll also really work on cleaning up the city. Our administration people will play a role in this in terms of, all of us pitching in to just physically do some cleanup around the city. But when you come to issues like abandoned cars that we've all seen on the streets that are in the same place for months and months, we should be getting those picked up in a matter of days. We should make sure street lights are being fixed, that graffiti is being cleaned up, that alleys are being cleaned. This doesn't take any more money. It really just takes a management, the right people, and a set of priorities and focus. And so I think people seeing things like this happening will help people have a sense of pride, renewed sense of optimism that this truly is going to be an administration that's moving Louisville in a new direction, that's going to do things differently. So those are just a few of the things. Hopefully there'll be some other public-private partnerships that we can announce. That hopefully there'll be not all of the art funding is yet allocated, and so that's going to be a big focus, is how we use some of this one-time federal money to invest in our community to make transformative change, or for some of the funds that have been allocated but not yet spent, is ensuring that those programs are doing what they were intended to do. Particularly in the area of public safety, there have been some funds that have allocated for programs, particularly geared towards some youth. We need to make sure that that's happening. We need to give our young people every opportunity to succeed and every reason to not turn to a life of crime.
Thank you. Let's go back to the priorities of public safety. As you were talking, the first one, how do you envision utilizing, or what are your plans to move the city forward after the results of the DOJ investigation are released?
So clearly, this is not a position the city or any city wants to find itself. The last thing you want is to be investigated by the DOJ. The last thing you want to be is under a consent decree, but that's likely where we are headed. Mm-hmm. And so my view is we have to view this as an opportunity. How do we use that likely consent decree as a framework for reform, as a framework for improvement for both the police department, for all of city government, and for improving public safety? And does this consent decree open up opportunities through the Department of Justice for additional funding to support programs, whether it's related to policing or other things as well that are complementary to policing, because we all know we cannot simply police our way to safety. Yes, we need 300 more officers so that our police force can focus on community policing. And so is there more funds available to help support the training? Because to me, the three core characteristics, the foundations of our police department, if we truly want to have the best police department in America, we should be the best trained, the most trusted, and the most transparent. And so we have improvement to get to that level, but that is what we should strive for. And so working with the DOJ's framework, that will be my focus for the leadership of LMPD, for the leadership of city government as a whole. And so I think there's opportunities for reform there. I support the hardworking men and women of LMPD. I want to continue to support them. I want to help not just retain the current officers that we have, but also recruit more. I think we need to think a little bit more creatively and broadly about how we do the recruitment, whether it's proactively reaching out to others that have characteristics of successful officers. We need to ensure that we have a far more diverse police force than we currently have, so that our police force reflects the community that we all serve. We also should be looking to other professions, that maybe there are social workers who we can train to how to be a police department. That would be wonderful, given the number of calls that we have coming into 911 that are mental health crises as much as any kind of public safety crises. Having officers who are trained in other areas like social work or mental health professionals would be wonderful. I'm also supportive of the pilot diversion program that the city has currently started, but I'd like to expand that countywide so that we have a team of people who are able to respond to mental health crises in even a better way than the police can because of their unique professional training. Did that answer your question? I started talking and then I realized I wanted to make sure. Okay.
That did answer your question, but I do want to follow up on, because officer shortages is an issue.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit more about, you talk about some looking at different ways to recruit. What are your ideas around remedying those shortages?
Sure. So some of it is pay, of course, and the city has taken a good step forward with what they've done recently. But we need to ensure that that is commensurate and continues to stay fair and appropriate, as well as retention. If we need retention compensation in there as well, we should look at that. We should look how we can bring back some individuals who have left the police force, either retired or gone to a different career or a different or department. How can we bring them back onto LMPD? But then also, just like any business that is looking to hire high quality individuals, they look for the criteria of what makes for a good officer, and then they reach out through digital efforts and proactively target individuals who fit those criteria that they're looking to hire. And so I think we need to be very proactive in this. It can't just be billboards. But ultimately, my hope is that the hardworking men and women of LMPD know that they have the support of the mayor, of their chief, that feel strongly supported, are proud of what they're doing to serve our city, and that we can enlist their support as well for their friends, family, colleagues who want to join them in a career of public service and public safety to keep our city safe.
And how do you do all of those things while at the same time working on some of the culture of impropriety that's been happening within LMPD?
From the officers who I've spoken with, I believe they are also supportive. They want a stronger culture as well. When individuals who are on LMPD do something wrong, it makes it harder for everyone else who is doing their job admirably and well and working their tail off every day to keep us safe. It makes it harder for them to do their job. And so when individuals do things that are not right, we need to be honest, we need to be transparent with the public about what's happened, what we've learned from that situation, and how we're going to do things differently moving forward. LMPD and the hardworking officers will have my strong support, but they will also know that I expect them to be held accountable, just as I expect the city to hold me accountable as mayor. I was on the board of trustees at the University of Louisville several years ago, and through that experience, where I worked with a group of other trustees to really we were pushing for far more transparency with that organization. This is a previous administration. We were fighting against excessive compensation at the executive level. We were fighting against what we believe to be unnecessary tuition increases on students, and just a greater amount of transparency and accountability. And what I learned through that experience is that transparent organizations are stronger organizations. Many people who are in leadership roles don't believe in transparency. I do. I believe that makes a stronger organization. And I believe that the public understands not everything always goes according to plan. Not everything happens that we're always proud of, but we just need to be transparent and honest with the community about that. And so to me, transparency and accountability are the hallmarks of a strong city government, of a strong police force, and the police officers, the police management will know that they have my support.
Do you think Chief Shields is doing a good job?
I am rooting for her success and the success of everyone on LMPD, and I think I don't want to do anything during this campaign that is going to keep the current city government, and the current chief and administration at LMPD from making progress towards a safer city. And so I am focused on getting elected in 19 days. I think we need to make a lot of improvements in LMPD and other areas of city government. But until the election, I think it would be inappropriate to say anything other than let's root for her and everyone's success to keep Louisville safe in the right, appropriate way.
So I'm assuming that means...
And I don't mean that just with Chief Shields, but with respect to any city government employees or management. I don't think it's appropriate to start saying who's going to be in what positions, because ultimately this election is about the choice for mayor, and ultimately the individuals who work in city government are accountable to the mayor, and I expect to be held accountable for those choices.
Thank you. Let's move on to affordable housing. Let's talk about affordable housing.
Okay.
How do you envision revitalizing neighborhoods without displacing residents through gentrification?
So that's critically important. We need to listen to neighbors, particularly in historically black communities, particularly in lower income communities, in neighborhoods that have been overlooked for your and my entire lifetime. If we are going to, as a city, invest in these neighborhoods, which we absolutely must do, we need to ensure that we are making investments that serve those who live there now to help them improve their lives. And so that's critically important. I think with respect to vacant and abandoned lots, just from what I have heard, individuals in neighborhoods, whether it's in Newburgh, where I just came from with Pastor Finley, or whether it's in the 9 neighborhoods of West Louisville or other neighborhoods around our city, addressing this issue of vacant and abandoned lots is critically important. We have got to turn those lots into opportunities for families to own homes, to start creating generational wealth, and in turn, make blocks and neighborhoods safer, cleaner, greener. These are all things that come with home ownership and all things that come when you improve, even if you have to go block by block. So that's going to be a big focus. And one other thing about affordable housing is I think it's critically important that affordable housing be across this entire city. I know there's some issues out there now with controversies about in different parts of the cities. We have 26 Metro Council districts. There should be affordable housing in all 26 Metro Council districts. People should have the opportunity to live near good paying career path jobs, near improved public transportation routes, near improved infrastructure, but also near other services or retail establishments that all of us around this table take for granted, whether that's grocery stores or whether that's medical facilities, whether it's a primary care doctor or a dentist. There are too many parts of this city that are food deserts, that are medical deserts, and that is the reason why we don't just have a wealth gap in this city between black and white residents, but also a health gap. And so while we're talking about affordable housing, let's work on creating partnerships with U of L Health or Baptist or Norton to put facilities in as we're building in neighborhoods that need more medical services or need more early childhood care centers. Let's put those as part of housing developments. Because really the only difference between affordable housing these days and market rate housing is that the affordable housing is subsidized by a federal or state or local program. The quality should be the same. And that's critical. And that's why when I mentioned earlier about LMHA, we need to make sure that the quality of city housing that it rents out is also at that same level. I talked about home ownership earlier, so I don't need to repeat myself there, but that needs to be a key part of the solution. And I will say that when we're talking about city investments, the city has made a historic level of investment in affordable housing with the American Rescue Plan over the past, call it 6 months. That's a great first step, but we also need to make sure when the city is investing in housing that we leverage those funds also with other federal and state or private capital. So that if we're investing $100 million of city funds, we can have $1 billion worth of investment or $800 million worth of investment. And so that's something that I want to focus on. That's something that I want to use my experience from the private sector on in creating public-private partnerships, is to have city money go further to make an even greater positive impact for people in our city.
Great. On that, when you talk about putting affordable housing across our neighborhoods and not just focused in one area or another to be closer to well-paying jobs, how do you plan to help ensure a robust workforce for those influx of businesses that we are seeing attracted to our region with companies when they're already struggling to retain employees now?
Yeah, so that is a challenge across all industries. So that's another, when I announced I was running for office, I announced that we would create a city Department of Education. And I'm going to tie that into your answer, but let me just clarify what that means and what it doesn't mean. It does not mean that the city will be involved in JCPS. Yes, as mayor, I do think the mayor should be an advocate for the best public education system in the entire state and country. So that is an advocacy role. But it is a small office that will be focused primarily on two things beyond advocating, well, three things beyond advocating for the best possible public education. One is collaboration. What can the city do to ensure collaboration among the current existing educational institutions, whether it's JCPS, U of L, Simmons College, Spalding, Bellarmine? What can we do to help support those organizations working together so that all education is thriving in Louisville? But really two other things. One is universal pre-K and spearheading that, what needs to be a really strong partnership between JCPS, between the city, between existing early child care providers, between the philanthropic community as well, to really go out for reaching out to the largest foundations in the country to ask them to make a transformative investment in Louisville. When we're on the map right now for some of the wrong reasons, let's put Louisville on the map for the right reason. Let's do that by making universal pre-K a reality. And so that's something that we focused on. And third, that was a long lead up to get to your question, is workforce development. Because as I see our city, our country, we're in a state of rapid change right now. Not everyone needs to get a 4-year degree to be successful in life, to have opportunity in life. There are so many ways to have good paying career path jobs, to start a business that don't require that degree. So yes, we should encourage kids who want to pursue a 4-year degree. By all means, I support Evolve 502. I support a strong education system so that kids are going to U of L, to Simmons College, out in the state, and hopefully move back. But also, there are many kids that might not be the right path for them. And so how can we work with other nonprofit organizations like AMP, like Kentuckiana Works, like Code Louisville, like Organized Labor, like JC, or even educational institutions like JCTC, so that young adults and even adults have skills, training that they need to have good paying jobs. Let me give you an example. Right now, our city is 1,500 nurses short. If you talk to U of L, Baptist, Norton, add it all up, it's about 1,500 short. Just think if all of the programs in the city were graduating more nurses so that we did not have that deficit of nurses in our city. We'd have a healthier city. And I mean, those are good paying jobs. That'd be like recruiting a Fortune 500 headquarters to Louisville, and we can do that ourselves. And so we need to work with our young adults or adults that are looking for more opportunity in life to help give them the training they need. At the same time, we should be focused on, so the rest of my economic, can I talk about the rest of my economic development platform? So
Absolutely.
Focusing on businesses that are already here. Far too often we've chased every big company out there and tried to get them to Louisville, and we've struck out. Yes, if there are businesses that are looking to locate, that are in the bourbon industry, that are in the logistics industry, that are in certain parts of the healthcare industry, that are in the battery industry, there's no better place on earth to be than located in Louisville, Kentucky, and we should go full steam ahead to recruit those businesses here. But we also need to focus on the businesses that are already here and proactively reach out and say, what can we do to help you grow here, to create more jobs here? I don't think that's something the city or other organizations have done enough of proactively reaching out to local businesses. And finally, workforce development, proactively reaching out. And finally, if Louisville is going to be a successful, vibrant, authentic, creative, growing city, we must be an inclusive city. We've got to be affordable, we have to be clean, and we have to be inclusive. And so I think it's very important that the mayor of Louisville stand up for inclusivity at the state and local levels. When it comes to, for example, the issue of abortion. Right now, as you all know, we have an extreme abortion ban in our state that provides no exceptions for rape or incest. I think it's important that the mayor stand up and say this law should be changed, that encourage people to vote no on Amendment 2. In addition to all the other things that we've talked about, the use of police to not arrest women and girls and doctors who might be accused of violating this extreme ban, and focus them on preventing violent crime, senseless gun violence from happening. But as people have the opportunity to work remotely anywhere in the country or world because their job might be remote. We want people to choose Louisville. People are going to choose Louisville if we are affordable, if we are clean, and if we are inclusive. And as mayor, I think that's something very important to focus on.
Let's go back to talking about, you mentioned the universal pre-K.
Yes.
And supporting families. So can you talk a little bit more about what that looks like in practice, or supporting young families with accessible, adequate early childhood development and child care in Louisville?
Sure. So right now, there are a lot of different ways to have early child care, early childhood care for your children, pre-K. Those who can afford it, it's a piece of cake. You enroll your student and you pay the bill. There are other programs like Head Start that provide it for those who cannot afford, but there's not enough of that as well. There are also those who struggle they have to make the tough choice of, do I work but have my kid in child care, or do I not work and stay home with my child? And I want to eliminate that choice, but I also want to provide more opportunities for kids. So here's what I think it looks like. I think it looks like a partnership between JCPS, the city government, the philanthropic community, existing early child care providers, and other national and local organizations that are committed to making this a reality. We have a plan that we reach out to the largest foundations in the country, foundations with hundreds of billions of dollars of assets, and ask them to partner with local foundations on a 10-year plan. Ultimately, I think the city has to pay for this ourselves, and we'll find a way to do that. But for the first 10 years, we need to ensure we build the infrastructure that's needed with the right schools and facilities. We need to ensure that we have the right trained workforce, because we're short teachers also, just like we are nurses and police officers, we're also short teachers. So we need that initial funding that we need to go outside of the city to invest here in Louisville to, again, put us on the map for the right reason. So our office will help coordinate that with all of these other partners that I mentioned.
Let's shift here to crime and violence and talk about that. I know that kind of goes with public safety, but what are your prevention plans? And tell us why you think they'll work.
Important question. So, as I mentioned earlier, we cannot simply police our way to safety. We need to do several things. We need to fully implement group violence intervention or community violence intervention plan. The different cities call it different things. These are programs that are proven to work in other cities like Boston that have significantly reduced the amount of violent crime. They only work if the federal, state, and local governments are working together, combined with other respected people in communities that are being impacted the most by violent crime. Members of the clergy, small business owners, neighborhood leaders, formerly incarcerated individuals, all must be a part of this group of folks that reach out, who identify mostly young males that have already gotten into a life of violent crime or that are most at risk of turning to that life, and working with them to have new opportunities in life. It's proven successful elsewhere. We have to fully implement it here and not just talk about it. We also need to invest more in community centers and their programming. So we just came, Pastor Finley and I did our announcement of his endorsement of me in Newburgh, where he grew up, at the Newburgh Community Center. And it's facilities like that, or the California Community Center, that need to not just be reopened, but we need to invest in programming in community centers, in libraries, and at parks, so that kids have more opportunities and more things to do after school, on weekends, over the summer, that are enrichment, that are educational, that give them hope and opportunity, regardless of their circumstances of life. So for example, in our parks, yes, we need to improve all of our public parks, and I aspire for all of our public parks to be at the same level of the parklands of Floyd's Fork or Waterfront Development Corporation. We also need to have programming there so that kids have great programming when they come to the park, and to supervise programming, again, to give them enrichment opportunities. And then finally, we need to continue to invest in the root causes of poverty, which I think far too often lead to lives of crime. That comes back to education, it comes back to infrastructure, healthcare, accessible grocery stores, all of the other things that we have been talking about. And so to me, this is a comprehensive effort. Some of these things we can do quickly, others take time, but we have not a moment to spare. There is no one who will have a greater sense of urgency than I do to make this a number one priority. After what my team and I have been through over this past year, and learning firsthand the impact of gun violence, not just on individuals like myself that have been directly targeted by it, but the impact on others, on family, friends, neighbors, neighborhoods. It is so negatively impacting our city that I really hope that everyone will join me in being part of the solution in any way that they can. Whether it's participating in a formal program, whether it's wanting to join the administration, whether it's wanting to run a program to support youth, or whether it's simply wanting to make their own block safer and doing things on their block with neighborhood watches, or helping clean up their block, or identifying a vacant property that the city can help turn into a new home ownership opportunity for a family. There is so much that anyone who wants to be a part of the solution can do, and they will have a role working with me if I'm fortunate enough to be elected mayor.
And how do you work to disrupt the generational gang violence culture? You can make more money on the street than you can at a legal job at Target or Wendy's or what have you, and then you have to overcome your also previous incarceration to get any said job.
Right.
How does that play into disrupting that?
So a few ways. First of all, I'm a strong believer in second chance opportunities. When I was CEO of 21C, we did a lot of outreach and a lot of job fairs, and we welcomed individuals who might have had a criminal record that prevented them from having other opportunities, because I truly believe in second chances for individuals. This is where workforce training comes in. It's where people who have credibility within particular neighborhoods, within particular groups of people, we need them to be leaders, to be a key part of the solution, to educate these young people on what their opportunities are, and then to help them get the education or training or experiences so that they can lead better lives that don't involve crime. But also at the same time, we have to address those who are committing the most violent crime, because it is a small number of people in our city that are committing the most violent crimes. Part of our crisis in our jail is because right now, over half the jail is filled with individuals who are there on bail of less than $1,000, many for nonviolent crimes, yet over half of our homicides are unsolved. Something's wrong with that. So I want our police to be focused on preventing violent crime and addressing those who commit violent crime, and then working with everyone else to have opportunity in life. And I understand that might be more than an overnight solution, but again, we will start on that immediately.
Sure. You have an opponent, that opponent is your enemy. And so, in the spirit of John McCain's famous moment of campaign civility, tell me something that you respect or like, or something nice about Bill Dira.
Did you all, I will answer that question. Did you all see just a couple days ago, this happened in a debate, and
no.
you've got to, I can't remember which it was, and the guy took a long pause.
Was it Minnesota?
And then he said something, it might have been, and then he said something that was like,
he said he liked to smile.
Yeah.
right, it was something so ridiculous, like what was the law? He said, oh no, he said, I thought about this a lot, and then it was,
It was Herschel, was it?
no, it wasn't Herschel Walker. Was it Minnesota? Okay.
That's right.
It wasn't Fetterman either. It wasn't one of the, but anyway, so as I've gotten to know Bill, we've done a lot of forums together, and so we certainly have a little bit of time, before and then also during the forum, or, you get to know him a little bit. He certainly is a loving grandfather. He really, really, really cares about his grandkids. He really cares about his daughter, and he also really, really, really loves J-Town. And those are things, so he certainly does have passions for his current community that he serves, and he certainly loves his daughter and grandkids.
Thank you.
And I don't think Bill is a bad man. I think he and others in his party advocate for some really bad policies that would move Louisville in a really bad direction. But I do not think he is a bad man.
Thank you for that. What do you think Louisville, we talk about the new direction and things that need to be addressed and just always, but what is something Louisville is doing right that you're excited about taking up the ball and running with?
Something that we're doing right. I would say.
There's a long pause.
Yeah, no, that's long. I'm also trying to talk about things that we haven't talked about already.
That's okay.
I will. Two come to mind.
Okay.
First, in the whole public safety realm, I briefly touched on it earlier, but the city started some call it a deflection program, some call it a diversion program, where there's a significant number of calls to 911 that are really mental health emergencies. And other cities like Eugene, Oregon, like Denver, have shown that if a mental health professional responds to that call, that the individual in need will get better care, the results will be better, it will save the city money, and you don't risk the situation escalating as a result of a response to an emergency. And so I would like the city working with U of L. Here's a great thing going back to the partnerships. That is a partnership with U of L and I believe Spalding University. Let's expand that collaboration to citywide because mental health is such an important issue in our city. And we need to do a better job working with mental health professionals and nonprofits in providing that. So I think that starting that program was a great first step. I would like to expand it. Another thing I think the city is taking some good first steps on, but we need to significantly expand, this might be up your alley, is on the issue of parks. And well, they're not doing a lot well in parks, but there was one thing in particular. They're building a couple of new parks that I think are good. For example, this Maple Street Park, right up here on like 18th, just south of Broadway. That is wonderful for that community that we're building a new park. Now, I think we need to do a lot more. I've talked about the park programming, and I have observed as I've run through all 623 precincts in Louisville, that to me, the best maintained parks in Louisville are the parklands of Floyd's Fork and waterfront park. Neither one of those is a city park. Our city park should aspire to that same level of quality. So that's something that we need to do better. But building parks in a part of town that are in need of more access to parks, given the positive impact parks can have on people's health and futures, that's great. The other thing is in the area of solar. The city has started a program called Solar Over Louisville, that I think, again, is a positive first step. And folks are starting to use that program to get incentivized to put solar power on their homes. Great first step. We need to expand that. We need to encourage more people who own their homes to do that. We need to encourage more businesses to use that. And the government itself should also be focused on renewables. So those are three things that I think the city has taken positive first steps on. I would like to expand and improve those initiatives, working with others as the next mayor.
Okay. Any other questions before I ask my last question?
You talked about a few places other than Louisville that you look at their policies and how they're approaching certain issues. Is there a city or a model that you like, that you look at, you think they're getting it right? And where would those be?
So I don't think there's one specific city that we should emulate. I don't think we should be the next Indianapolis, the next Nashville, the next you fill in the blank. I think Louisville will be best if we remain authentic to who we are, if we preserve our history, our historic buildings, if we focus on our culture and have that shine in the best possible way. I do think there's a lot of ways that we can learn from what some other cities have done successfully. So I just mentioned one, looking at how Denver and Eugene, Oregon have done this diversion program well. Houston, for example, I believe has addressed their homeless crisis about as well as anyone else in the country with the housing first model. And so I believe we should emulate them on that. Indianapolis has done a great job of placemaking and infrastructure for their downtown to thrive. So looking at what certain cities have done really well that we can then emulate here. Boston, with their fare free transit pilot that Mayor Wu has recently unveiled. I think we should be working on that because it's not just about eliminating fares for those who don't have the resources to pay, but it's also about improving the experience. And actually, the interesting thing is when you go to a fare-free public transportation, you improve the quality of service because at each stop is a much shorter period of time because there's not that transaction that takes time before the bus moves again. And so it improves the quality of service for the riders. It also saves money because there's less wear and tear on the bus, and you save fuel because the routes take quicker to perform. And so Boston right now is doing all the economic analysis on how the pilot program for fare-free transit has worked. Really curious to see how that results go because that's something that Tim and I talked about this morning. We are both strong advocates of that. We think we should pilot it here. And so I'm curious to see how that works out in Boston. So things from each city.
You talked about the public-private partnerships. Who's doing that you like? Who's kind of implementing that in a way that you feel like is great?
Well, one city that I've worked on that's done that really well is Cincinnati. They created an organization there called Cincinnati Center City Development Corporation, or 3CDC, where it was a partnership between the city, between the private sector, some large philanthropic organizations, and the nonprofit communities that really got together that focused on an area of their city that was in need of a lot of investment, support, and help called Over the Rhine. I'm not sure there's an exact comparable neighborhood in Louisville, but certainly it would be closer to a California or a Parkland neighborhood in Louisville, although Over the Rhine happens to be in closer proximity to downtown Louisville. There was a great model where they have now had hundreds of millions of dollars of funding and truly helped support the neighbors who live there and have improved the lives of those who have lived there and also brought new people to improve the quality of those neighborhoods as well.
So do you think Louisville needs its own Department of Transportation?
I think that would be great.
Okay, that was my last question. You walked me right into that question. That's perfect.
Focusing on streets, on infrastructure, on public transportation, on, we have all this money that's coming into our system from it's been announced there's a new plan for 9th Street, there's a new plan for Broadway, but there are hundreds of millions of dollars available through the Infrastructure Act. We've got hopefully a Secretary of Transportation that would want to support his, neighboring state, although now I think he moved to Michigan. So there's so much opportunity. I think there's a great way to coordinate that and to really focus on doing some innovative things. There are a lot of people in the city that have a lot of great ideas that haven't been implemented. I mean, just one is a little thing like this crosswalk we talked about. It's downtown Louisville, they're now doing one that's just white paint. They say we can't do color paint, have multicolors. Well, Lexington has it. I've given the reason. The reason is incredibly frustrating why we haven't done that. But so yes, I am a supporter.
Great, thank you.
How are you going to manage to have a balanced life in this job? Because it just sounds like...
I'm not sure I will. I try to sleep well, eat well. I try to run every morning and get up as early as necessary to get a quick run in most mornings. That keeps me sane. My wife and kids have been very supportive of this. Basically, when I'm not campaigning, I am trying to spend as much time with them. And so last weekend, I took time out of my campaign schedule to spend several hours with my son, who's a senior, who's applying to colleges, and he's got a November 1st deadline. So I wanted to help answer any questions he had or help him, look over his essays or proofread his application. That's something that my wife and I talk about. I promise her with true commitment that we will find time, but she's also been great. So we've spent a lot of our time together on the campaign. What'd you say? I'm sorry? Campaigning, right. But it's been a great bonding experience. I spent a lot of my time when I was CEO of 21C. I was on the road a lot, building hotels in other cities or looking for new ways to expand the business. I don't do that traveling now. So my family is really, really, really important to me. It always has been. This experience has actually brought us closer together. But that's something that I am committed to ensure, while it might not be balanced, that it's an area of focus for me, that I do have good quality time with my wife and kids.
Right.
Try not to get involved. If I could just say one thing. I know you said in your email that you all are not going to make an endorsement in the mayor's race. If I can just say though, the people of Louisville really trust you all, and they really respect you all. I know you get mean emails probably.
I'll say you've not seen my inbox.
Right, yeah. But no, I mean, there are undecided voters all over this city, and they really respect and trust your reporters, and, you know, would love to know what you all think, and we'll respect your decision
Sure.
either way. But I just had to say that.
Sure. No, the objective is to help voters make the decisions that align with their values and what they want, not to tell them who to vote for. So I think that the result will be what's best for each person. So that's the intent. That's the intent. But there will be an editorial, just not an endorsement.
Can I just add one final thing that we
Absolutely.
did not talk about, I don't
Sure.
think, but I do think it's on the minds of a lot of people,
Okay.
and that's the issue of abortion, particularly with Amendment 2 on the ballot. I don't know what you all think, but to me, Bill and other Republicans are saying one thing that I just think is flat out wrong. They're trying to convince people that abortion is not a local issue. And so we don't even have to get into what my views are. I think those are clear. I've made, and you guys follow the news, you know what I've said and where I am on that. But now more than ever, after the Dobbs decision and Roe v. Wade was overturned, this is more than ever a local issue. Whether it's like what we're talking about with, are the police going to enforce Kentucky's extreme abortion ban? Is the buffer zone, that's been an issue, a local issue for as long as time's been around, are we going to support a buffer zone so that women who are seeking health care have easy and safe access into clinics? And finally, the reason this is such a ridiculous argument they're making is if it was not a local issue, why are Right to Life organizations endorsing local candidates in Louisville, across Kentucky, and across America? And why have they been doing it for 20 years? They know better than that. This is just their way to try to confuse the issue or make it about something else. But I do believe that is an important issue, and now more than ever it's a local issue. And so I think it's important that people in Louisville know where the candidates stand on how they're voting for Amendment 2. I've been very clear I am voting no, and what their issues are with respect to this issue. So
Yeah, thank you.
They've done a great job covering it.
no, you've done an amazing job. We hadn't talked about it, and it seems to be on a lot of voters' minds, particularly on women's minds, and I felt like I wanted to mention it before I walked out.